afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased to be here. This place is anointed. There's no doubt about that. And I want to become part of it because God has called us, has called each and every one of us to share our lives' testimony about finding Him. So what you see on the screen, teaching the brain to trust again. When Michael approached me, I came up with this title just, I'd say an hour or two. I agreed. We talking among ourselves about what to present since I'm stepping in from someone else. He said, you know what, why don't you give your testimony? And so a testimony it is. But since I'm a man of science, and I feel comfortable sharing science with folk, I said, I can combine both. And he said, please do. Science without the truth that is found in the Bible, that is given to us by divine inspiration, is nothing. And we have been endowed with a physiology to be transformed since we are born. Isn't that amazing? God has created us with this ability to develop and to attain levels of development in harmony with His purpose for us. Now that is amazing. Do you say amen to that? This is something that I've been really passionate about since I enrolled in science. Now I know and I understood in my younger years, I want to say 30 years ago, why I was going into science, why I had the inclinations for science, and why I'm in the situation in my role now. And I consider myself a mentor to young people. I'm in academia right now. Probably going to go back to some research activities. And being part of this type of ministries is something that God has put before us, my wife and I. And we have said, okay, Lord, we're going to follow. We're going to follow your lead. And so here we are. And I have a specific message for those of us, those of you, those that are watching, that inside the church, there's much trust to be held. Because we can trust ourselves limitedly, can we trust those around us? And that is the big question I want to address today. So I want to begin by telling you this. Our brain, and I have another picture, but I chose this because look at the age 6. These are the neuronal networks, just in a sketch, meaning the neurons and the pathways they create. This is an oversimplified figure for the sake of illustrating what happens in our brains. Actually, when we are born, we have a greater number of neurons as compared to those in age 6. But look what happens by age 20. You see that other column. What has happened to some of the brains, the neurons. They have pruned out. They have retracted. They're no longer there. However, the neuronal connections illustrated at age 20 are much more efficient than the one at age 6. And age 7 to 19, we have different curves of physiological rearrangement in the brain, where the synapses, the prefrontal excitatory synapses, begin to take a dive, right? And the prefrontal dopamine innervation takes an upward current. In other words, those two, the control exerted from the prefrontal cortex begins to increase, whereas excitatory synapses begin to what? Decrease. Isn't that what we see in our children? I want this now, versus maybe I should think about this a little more. So the prefrontal cortex exercises that change. And in saying this, I want to tell you that God has put these mechanisms in place so that our prefrontal cortex, which is the region of the brain that modulates impulses, the emotional brain itself, it's engaged in such a manner that we go from impulsivity to reason, slowly but surely. And in that in this period of development, we are called as parents to watch closely. How many of you are parents here? Excellent. You know what I'm talking about. I have a 6-year-old. You've seen me with him. He follows me everywhere. Because of him, I've taken a lesser load of work, at least for the time being, because I want to be with him at least a little more time now compared to what happened to me. And so, and I'm not saying, look, I want to just say that I was not ignored by my parents by any stretch of the imagination. All I'm saying is that at key moments that were absent, serving the Lord. My parents are God-fearing people, Seventh-day Adventists, who serve the church with their lives. And that could be a liability for our families. Everybody agrees? I'm not here to complain either. Look where I am. I am here thanks to my parents. That's a disclaimer, by the way. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. So I'm not here to just say, oh, yeah, they really didn't do what they were supposed to. Absolutely not. All I'm saying is that I want to highlight the fact that parents must be there when? At key moments. And that's hard to discern. I'm with you. I'm a parent. I may be missing the mark. That's why every day we must kneel down and ask the Lord for guidance. Isn't that true? Now, below this graph that you see, we are very molecular. we are basically walking biochemical laboratories. Did you know that? Our cells are, each of them, it's a lab of chemistry. So people that go to med school, that do clinical work, including scientists, they must know chemistry as everybody else do. Because then we understand that God is an amazing scientist. And he has formed those molecules to interact with each other in such a way that look at who we are. We can speak, we can reason, we can adapt to the environment, we can respond to disease. It's all via molecules. Isn't that amazing? Praise God for that. And LTP, you see that on your left, is when those connections between neurons develop, those look like barrel, in this cartoon illustration, but those are proteins that allow ions or neurotransmitters to come in. The opposite happens by age 20, where some of those disappear. So this change in the brain happens not only at the morphological level, but at the molecular level, with molecules and proteins being altered, disappearing, and reshaping. Hey, welcome to the reshaping in the image of God as we grow. That was God's intention, did you know? And I'm going to concentrate on the brain. So here goes my story. Are you ready for this? So I'm not going to be as specific as most of us are not when it comes to testimonials like this. Don't want to put anybody on the spot. However, let's just say that I was overseas in a mission field at a very, very nice, in a nice environment, filled with Christians, Seventh-day Adventists from some parts of the world. And it was a setting like this, Berrien Springs and the university, similarly. And my parents were talented people. My father with people on one-on-one, more than on the stage. I think I got the speaking abilities of my mother, because my mother, that lady, can stand up and grab your attention like nobody's business, like anyone else can. I don't know, talented. Is a great communicator, a great teacher. My father just makes you feel wanted in a home. Bless them. The church saw that in them and captured them and says, you're working for us, for people. They had the best intentions in their hearts. Why not? Don't we want to give our talents to the Lord? Serving the church, right? My two sisters and I then were small, and we start to notice that they'd be gone in the afternoons after school. Where were they? Basically, my father connected with other human beings, other people that would ask for him to come to their homes. Like I told you, he had a talent with people. He could relate to them, and he could grow churches like that, one-on-one. Kind of a skill that I don't see nowadays, because you can go on YouTube and get converted, so to speak, and then join the family. That the times have changed. My mother, always as an educator, working and innovating. And so, as a 5-year-old, I was put in charge of my two sisters, of 3 and 2 already. And then I had to take responsibility immediately. So, during the summertime, my parents said, well, we have now the conference meetings, the union meetings, and since we're in an international kind of setting, we have other meetings, to help other pastors from different parts of the world. Let's send our kids to be with grandma, with the grandparents. And here I was. So I was the first one to experience that. Now, my grandmother, rest her soul, was a dear lady that had a passion for helping young people, most of them females, young females, and females that were perhaps trying to be rescued, trying to find their way. And my grandmother says, no, I want to help. And she would step in and bring them into the house, her house, and have them basically stay there for 2 weeks until they found where they needed to go. A good heart. And there I was growing up, 8, 9. Sometimes she brought some of these girls and said, please take care of my son. I'm going to go to the market, and I'm going to go doing this and that, errands. And that's when my eyes were open. I'm going to tell this one episode and then another one that exemplified what I mean by eyes open, literally opening. So some of these girls came with some habits that were not wholesome, meaning wanted to be playful, if you know what I mean, with a young boy. Now, I resist the word molested, but it is what it is. Whether it's benign, it's just a play, or overtly abusive. Would you agree? Because in the mind of the child, we are still trying to make connections and understand. Our brain is not capable. Tomorrow with my wife, we're going to highlight this point. The emotionality of this. We as children, when we were younger, we were not capable of processing things the way older folk do. And so they were playful with me, to say the least. Now, I had something about me that I was endowed. God gave me this to process, even if it's a young kid, and I see this in my boy, to really question things. What is this? Why this? And why that? Very kind of analytical. And so I began to question things. But I remember 2 occasions where the babysitter took me into the bedroom and started to tickle me and touch me. Now, I could tell now as an adult that she was trying to experience something herself. And you see, the devil established chains of reactions. Because if we go back, we want to ask, what might have happened to this young lady? She was, I think, 13 or 14 at that age. And I was 8, around that age. And I realized that could also happen now among family members. Have you thought about that? As a matter of fact, I've seen that happening. And when I grew a little older, I tried to get a kick out of that, having my little cousins kind of play in a way that is not appropriate. And I thought it was fun. I didn't think that, but you see how that can happen. It's a chain. Another instance which really seared in my mind and really opened my eyes, that actually happened. So my mother was a dean of women at a dorm in the same institution, and our house, the way it was designed, was for the dean right by the dorm. And there was back alleys to our backyard, right by some of the rooms with the windows, of course. And most of you would know that as a young lady, you are kind of trying to protect yourself. When you change, you do things. I mean, isn't that natural? You don't want to be just out in the open. You close the windows, right? What you do the natural thing. I mean, that's what everybody that has some sense of privacy does. Unfortunately, and this is the devil again playing, a chance here to educate this boy. I don't want his parents to educate him. I want these young ladies to educate him. So I was shown some parts at that age. And I woken up and I go, whoa. And I got scared. Remember what happened to Adam and Eve when they sinned first? That amygdala and their brains might have been firing. Whoa, what is this sensation? What is this? We need to hide. Whoa, look at you. What is happening? Well, that sensation overcame me at first. And that happened maybe not too many times, 2 or 3 occasions they were laughing about it. So I put 2 and 2 together. And I began to assume that, these young women, teenage girls, present themselves so holy. Yet, in private, they act up a little different. I cannot trust females. At 9 years old, I was developing this mistrust of females. You know what that can do to a young boy. And so I can say, and I've talked to people, friends of mine, I became a cynic of the opposite gender by being exposed to that. And here I am. I'm just a child of good parents, admired by the church, who work in the church, yet this is happening in my mind. And I'm just one example, folks. One example. What is happening to other children? Think about that. Here I am, though. When I grew up, I want to go back to 2 episodes more to see how this play out. I say, here I am because I can talk to you. I have processed this, and I feel when Michael asked, I responded, I have a confession to mention now and tell you this is the first time I'm talking about this. Finally, at my age, I'm saying, you know what? Somebody needs to hear this because this is so benign. Yet it's seared in my mind for the years to come. And that is what I want to talk about this. Because as a young man, I was very casual with females because of that reason. And because of that reason, the young ladies gravitated towards me because I was not the attached type. I was not the, please stay with me. I was not that. I was the opposite. And guess what? In their immaturity, girls assume, well, this guy must have something good to offer. So here they come. So the devil was putting opportunity after opportunity in my path. And so I began to assume this personality because I'm still finding myself as well as a young man. My father did his best to spend time, but he was always busy. And so I started to take on the roles, imitate the roles of older kids and during sports. I was timid. I was loved by females because I was very well-mannered. My mother taught me well. But when that hurt, meaning put down, bullied, I became doubly mean to them by age 15 or 16. Because I said, you're not doing that to me. The young girls didn't do this to me. You will not do this to me. I became meaner, conniving. My mother didn't know what to do with me. And you see that? And all in my head, guys, all in my head. And I want to say that every young person goes through their own history. But mine, as benign as it may seem, creates an environment of potential dysfunctionality when it comes to relationships. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. She has her own stories. We both are damaged. Hers, and we're both mildly damaged, but enough to create this sense of dysfunctionality. The question is, are we going to continue that to our children? We have a choice. So I'm speaking to those of you that may have had similarities in this, that the small things can be enhanced by the circumstances. And I don't have the time to point to those circumstances, but I could have gotten in trouble a couple of times, I can tell you that, with females. And perhaps become a father earlier than my mind was able to bear. And that is a problem in society, don't we? Don't we have the young fathers that just have children and they're not even ready for that phase? So, when I met my wife, she brought stories with it, and we have been working on ourselves, on our intimacy, because that affected us. But boy, God knew what He's doing. And the only reason that my wife and I are blessed is because I knelt down and said, Lord, I'm going to make a bad choice. Please send the lady that is for me. And God said, you learned wrongly about ladies. It will take you, to reverse that, it will take you years, and you have to work with me. Now I understand that message. I did not understand when I got married. I was so impatient. But that is the path for me. What is the path for you? What was the path for you? What is the path to your children? The best thing is to pray about your children, pray about you. God can also open up your minds and make you whole at 60, 75, 80. It doesn't matter. Because we are going to eternity. So whatever time we spend here learning, it's okay. That's the second message. The first message was, and I want to second what my sister said, even when you act and live in cynicism towards the opposite gender, you can be changed. And the second one is, it's never too late, because we keep learning on earth in preparation for that eternal life that we're looking forward to. I want to also say that to trust and to love cannot be learned in fear. Absolutely not. If I continue to live in fear of not getting it right, or a woman taking advantage of me, and hence me playing them instead of surrendering myself in my heart with God's help, I was not going to learn to be in a stable and good relationship. Would you agree? That had to happen, guys. And so I want to say that the fear response is constant in our lives. So I have this figure to illustrate what happens. Here's a quote from one of our colleagues: the infection of Satan's kingdom, me first, survival of the fittest, fear, blame, and selfishness are woven into the very fabric of our fallen human nature. Would you agree with this statement? That's what the devil wants. That's what Satan has, the ability for him to influence human beings to be all about myself. Me is such great that we look like those two rams. Who will attain dominion over self and my own environment, what I can do for my own. And so here's a contextual thing. I want you to see that picture where we have a snake. Are you afraid when you see a snake in an enclosed exhibit at a zoo? Not a chance. I mean, you even get close. What if you see the same, and it's a venomous snake, let's say. What if you see the same snake in the wild? What would you do? I bet you jump and you run. You get out of there. Because it's in the context. So fear is contextualized. The structures that you see there, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, the thalamus, the hippocampus, those are regions of the emotional brain, as some of you know, that fire in both instances, but with a modulatory mechanism that contextualizes why I should be afraid and why I shouldn't. So the prefrontal cortex and other areas of the limbic system engage the neurons of reflex, and they say, I'm tamed, calm down. It's over there. You have nothing to fear. As opposed to being in the wild, where those same structures say, run for your life now. And there have been experiments in rats, obviously we don't experiment on humans, where they have trained animals in laboratory rats to react and maximize their efficiency to run away from a threatening presence. It could be an odor of a predator. And they learn to identify the closest exit of the cage or the maze. They learn to be efficient in the use of navigation if they're in a tank of water, to get out of there because it's very uncomfortable, there's rodents, and et cetera, et cetera. I've worked with some of those behavioral assays, and that means that the brain has a capability to protect you using this practice and rehearsal. Just a keynote for you guys. If you want to become a better Christian, you have to rehearse, don't you? We rehearse away from danger. Well, we have to rehearse discerning things that come from the devil and the world into a life of light. We cannot just, God will take care of me and that's it. We have to rehearse. That's just a physiological thing that we have. And we're going to talk about this neuroplasticity event tomorrow. So, the power of beliefs in humans is such a great thing that here's an experiment they did. So wisdom teeth extraction experiment. There was two groups, a mock treatment group and a no treatment group. For what? They were told, at one group, and the mock group, they tell them, look, it's gonna hurt, but boy, we're gonna give you a we're gonna give you a medication, but if it works, it works. In other words, they told them that it was gonna hurt, and they were gonna be treated with this amazing medication that your pain will go away. That's the control group. Both were told that way. To the mod group, and this is the opposite, inverted. They gave a saline thing, a saline water. You know what saline is? A hypertonic solution of sodium chloride. It's benign. And they put a little bit of a tablet that dissolved, which is just a salt tablet, and they make a saline that way. This will calm your toothache. Okay? The other group, they said, okay, we're going to give you the same thing, but you won't feel that thing. You won't feel that thing. Trust me, this thing is very powerful. So they told similar things to each other, but they told them that the toothache, to one group that it was going to get better, to the other group they just say, take this, it may work or may not work. Just that. It may or may not work, but versus it will surely work. So guess who was who in that picture of the twins there? The one that is complaining was told it may or may not work. The one on the left, they both received what? Saline what, remember? The one on the left was told it would surely work. What happened to Adam and Eve? What happened to Eve when Satan told her, will you surely die? I don't know, are you sure? What did she say? Oh, maybe the power of suggestion. You see that? And so the power and belief in humans is used by the devil to deceive you and to deceive many within the church. It starts with one phrase, and it can magnified in a set of beliefs. And so that's what they use, the placebo effect, don't they? A lot of doctors do, but it's powerful. You can suggest the level of pain in this manner. Now, I want to tell you that in my experience, I was saved by phases. I didn't have the most dramatic experience to tell you, but enough to make me be very, very dysfunctional in my relationships. And it costed me in my 20s a little bit of that. But thank God I belonged to a congregation and found loving people in the way that believed in me. We must trust each other to do this. So young people, I know that if you're watching, you must find somebody you trust that can mentor you. They have a great value, and if they want to pray with you, if it's a godly man or a godly woman, please listen to them, because they will be instruments to bring you into this communion with God, where He would give you the brain that He designed so that you can become what He wants you to become for His sake and His kingdom. And so the things that affect the health of the mind, of course, here are lies believed to break the cycle of love and trust. What would happen if somebody came to you and told you, you know, your husband, I think he is, how can I put it, being a little inappropriate at work with a colleague? Would you believe that person right away? Or you say, I know my husband, I need evidence. But what if that person comes again and again and again and go, what about this and this? I saw this and that. A lot of people just go on that assumption. Did you know that? They don't look for the evidence. They just look for reaffirming statements. And that is one way to ruin your mind towards functioning of dysfunctionality, assuming things. That happens in our church as well. It happens with our theology. God will zap you down if you don't shape up, or whatever it is. God is love, and you don't have to do anything. He will accept you as it is. You have to do nothing else, that kind of thing. Does that sound familiar? We have to exercise our mind. And so when we believe with evidence, that builds up the mind. The other one is fear and selfishness, survival of the fittest mentality that I already talked to you about. Those things go against the nature of God that is founded in love and trust, you see. The last one is a destructive act. So everything happens by phases. First, we start to believe things that are not true, that distort who should we trust and who are we to become under God's design plan for us. Then we start to get defensive. Okay, so that's the next phase, and we are not really opening up to others. Exactly what happened to me. I kind of put a circle around me, and I was conniving about that, plan everything, calculate everything, and not be open with my feelings. Then the third is destructive acts and sin. Well, if I become a cynic and it doesn't matter anymore, I can sleep around, I can drink, I just party and destruct myself in the process. Because, hey, it doesn't matter, right? I buy into that cynicism. These three things are manifestations of this mistrust. And so tomorrow we're going to talk about the physiology about this. I can wait for my wife and I to talk about this in more detail. And then I want to also tell you that evidence is important. I want to conclude with two more slides, but this one is the one that saved me. Didn't I tell you that as a little child, as a little boy, I was used to engage my mind, very analytical? It is true. There's an advantage, but everyone should do this, should engage the mind. There's, for instance, the harmonized truth. You see that in the middle, the harmonized truth? Science with experience and a spiritual insight. You have two of those. There's no harmonized truth. Truth is incomplete. Let's say we have experience and spiritual insight. The experience of being in church, grow in the church, and we have a spiritual insight because we read the spirit of prophecy and other sources, and we get rich in that concept. But where's the evidence? Or we gravitate towards science and a spiritual insight, but we have not lived enough or have not experienced given to others to put into practice that evidence and the spiritual insight. In my case, the science, when I studied and I became a scientist, guess what? God revealed himself to me through science. Can you believe that? That is my experience. I became converted in my heart. And I'm still undergoing that conversion, because you don't stop once you embrace the truth. You continue to grow. I embraced that once science became plausible, and I said, God's creation is amazingly supreme. And we were put on earth to glorify his name. In his creation, he's glorified. And then we become dependent on him for transforming not only ourselves, but others, other lives. And that is what made sense to me. And I want to share it with everybody. I'm so excited because there's a foundation there that to me makes sense. What makes sense to you? What moves you? What causes you to be on fire? But I would want to subject everybody to these three realms. Science, the observance of principles that have to make sense when we interact with our environment. You will not walk across when there's traffic because you know that the momentum of other vehicles are going to crush you compared to yours, right? Or you're going to say, Lord, make them stop. Not going to work. God doesn't work that way. He works with logic, right? And also the moral and altruistic principles of dependence must guide our purpose, because if we don't have that spiritual insight, we can know everything about the science. We can maybe serve others and even go and volunteer to reach other people. But if we don't have the spiritual light of guidance that comes from Christ through his scriptures, and we constantly search for more truths, then we're not going to be complete in our purpose. And the last one is that love and trust has to be harmonized to the living principles. so that what the light and the knowledge we have has to be materialized, and we engage ourselves in this growing experience. And that's what I wanted to share with you. I know I covered for somebody, but the bottom line is that our brain can trust again. And I want you to know that whatever your issue has been, you can change, because there's a mechanism in our physiology. I want to finish with this. By beholding, we become changed. And as we meditate upon the divine model, we shall desire to become wholly transformed and renewed in the image of His purity. It is by faith, which is trust, in the Son of God that transformation takes place in the character, and the child of wrath becomes the child of God. I mean, that's powerful. By beholding, we become. Who are we beholding? We must behold Him, and we'll be transformed. And we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image, from one degree of glory to another, from glory to glory. Have you heard that? For this comes from the Lord, who is in the Spirit. It comes from our Creator. But we must follow that route to Him, to the source of truth. How do we do that? There are many paths, they say. Our prayer should be this: Lord, show me the path you have for me, so that I can end up in your truth, and I can become a blessing to others. What is your truth? Thank you.